Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
A new record. Clemens has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game.
2-1 pitch from Shaw into left center. There it is. Rose has eclipsed Cobb. That's number 4,192.
Presenting great moments in baseball. The Record Breakers. More than any other sport, baseball is devoted to its history. For every achievement is measured against the ones that come before, and every number, every statistic has an all-important place in the game. In this special presentation, which begins with the turn of the century, we'll feature the famous records, the unusual, and the records they said would never be broken. What follows, then, are the legends and legacies handed down to every fan, for whom the magic of the game lies in knowing that you could always look it up. In baseball terms, you might say life began with Babe Ruth, the charismatic Sultan of Swat, who became as much a part of American folklore as any figure in history. In giving the game the home run, Ruth brought it into a new era. His 1927 total of 60 homers was simply staggering. 12 teams hit fewer homers than the Babe. And even as the home run became popular, Ruth's total of 60 would remain a single-season record for more than 3 decades.
Ruth is the only player I know that when he came out on the field, everybody stopped. It was like the star came onto the center stage, you know. And when he went up to take batting practice, nobody looked at anything else but Babe swinging that bat up. I'm talking about his own players, and I'm talking about the visiting team. And when you get that kind of magnetism, you know that you're the star.
Babe Ruth was the greatest home run hitter that I ever saw. Now I'll say, there's no man ever living, or ever will live, or ever be born that could hit a ball as far as Babe Ruth, as consistently as Babe Ruth.
The Babe retired with 714 home runs, but even that record was made to be broken. Henry Aaron, an unpretentious star with the Milwaukee and then Atlanta Braves, had been hitting home runs at a somewhat quiet but steady pace. However, by the end of the 1973 season, he was 1 home run shy of tying Ruth's mark. That season ended on a drawn breath for most everyone but Aaron.
I never did give it any thought, really. I think once I reached something like 650, I was way up in the 600. I thought that I had an outside chance, you know, if everything would fall in place.
Opening day, 1974.
3-1 pitch. There's a drive into left field. That ball is going, and out of here. Henry Aaron has just tied Babe Ruth in the all-time home run parade. The crowd is up. As you would expect, the standing ovation. His teammates are there to greet him. A 3-run blast by Henry Aaron has tied the great Babe Ruth. The record they said that couldn't be reached has just been reached by Henry Aaron.
A few days later, on April 8th, 1974, before 53,000 fans at home in Atlanta, Aaron ended the agonizing speculation of whether he could or whether he should, and finally did.
Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
It's like somebody had put a piano on my back, and after I hit the home run, it was all of a sudden was off of my back. You know, I was just like as light as a feather. It was just a great moment.
39 years after Ruth retired as the game's greatest home run hitter, Henry Aaron was now 1 home run better. By the time he called it quits at the end of the 1976 season, Aaron would bring his record total to 755. Thus, the first name in the record books is also first in home runs. Ironically, it was in the house that Ruth built that Babe Ruth's season home run record would fall. The year was 1961. The hitter, Roger Maris, and the quandary for many Yankee fans whether a not-so-favorite Yankee should challenge the Babe's sacred record. But that wasn't all that made the pressure unbearable.
I don't think it was so much the pressure of playing the game of baseball, but answering the questions of the press day after day, so many fellas, and every day your photographers, and after the ball game it's the writers, and before the game it's the writers, and it was just a real pleasure to get out there and play the game.
Finally, October 1st, the last day of the season.
Then you got a handful of people sitting out in left field, but in right field, man, it is mobbed out there, and they're standing up. Here's the windup. Fastball hit deep to right. This could be it. Way back there. Holy cow! He's 61 for Maris. And look at him fight for that ball out there. Holy cow! What a shot! Another standing ovation for Roger Maris. And they want Maris to come out and take another bow. He does. Man, if his teammates are pushing him out there, he wants to get down, they won't let him.
The record was safely in the hands of Roger Maris, and the historic home run ball was temporarily in the hands of Yankee fan Sal Durante, who remembered the event as if it were yesterday.
Well, I knew it was going over my head. I jumped on my seat right away. Jumped right up on the seat, reached as high as I can go, and right in.
It was obvious that we had to get that baseball. It was obvious that we had to identify it, and we were going to make something of this event.
They wouldn't let me take the ball out of Yankee Stadium. Okay, and so I agreed to put my initials on the baseball, and that's the way I left it until I went to Sacramento to meet Roger. And we did a publicity stunt there. He was supposed to meet me in Sacramento and exchange the ball. The restaurant owner would give me the $5,000. I would give him the ball, and in turn, he'd give Maris the ball as a gift.
And I'm going to present this ball to you, Roger. I'm making you a gift of this ball for you to do with it as you see fit, for your own personal memoirs or to put in the Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure.
A record season for Maris and a career record for Lou Gehrig. In his 17 seasons, Gehrig hit 23 Grand Slams, more than any other player in history. Gehrig also hit 4 consecutive homers in one game, a record he shares with only 2 others. Cleveland's Rocky Colavito, who accomplished the feat against Baltimore in 1959, and most recently, Mike Schmidt of the Phillies, who did it on April 17, 1976 in Wrigley Field. He cracked 4 consecutive homers against the Cubs. Schmidt collected more home runs and RBIs than any third baseman in history. He also led the National League in home runs a record 9 times, but that's not the most ever. The Major League record belongs to none other than Babe Ruth. In fact, Ruth wore the home run crown more times than any other hitter, 12. From the Sultan of SWAT to the Sultans of SWAT, the 1961 Yankees, who hit the most home runs of any team in history, 240. Ty Cobb's approach to the game was simple. Get a hit, steal a couple of bases, and somehow score. But his extraordinary talents aside, Cobb was nobody's sweetheart. One sports writer of the day wrote that he was possessed by the Furies. Still, he left behind enough records to convince even his most severe critics that he belonged with the game's greatest players. You could look it up. Cobb owns the highest lifetime batting average of all time, 367. He scored more runs than any player. And when he retired in 1928, he'd collected an astonishing total of 4,191 base hits. Half a century later, a gritty, hustling player named Pete Rose would challenge Cobb's hit record. In fact, Rose would pursue a lot of records. In 1978, he tied Wee Willie Keeler's 1897 National League mark by hitting safely in 44 consecutive games. Three years later, under the glare of intensive media coverage, Rose closed in on Cobb's monumental record. On August 10th at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, he singled against the Cardinals' Mark Littell, thereby passing Stan Musial to become the National League's all-time hit leader. In 1985, back with the Reds, Rose took one last crack at Cobb.
A standing room only crowd in Cincinnati on its feet. Rose looking for hit 4-1-9-2. 2-1 pitch from Shouse into left center. There it is. Rose has eclipsed Cobb. That's number 4,192.
And so, the man who has played more games than any major leaguer and who owns more than a dozen records became the most prolific hitter in baseball history. Hall of Fame first baseman George Sisler heads the all-time list for most hits in a season. In 1920, with the St. Louis Browns, Gorgeous George collected 257. To many, the most remarkable batting feat of all belongs to Joe DiMaggio. In 1941, en route to his second of 3 MVP awards, Joltin' Joe set out on a hitting streak that wouldn't quit. Along the way, he broke George Sisler's American League mark of hitting in 41 straight games and Wee Willie Keeler's National League record of 44. In every game from the middle of May to the middle of July, DiMaggio had at least one hit. And on July 17th, when he was finally stopped, DiMaggio had hit in 56 consecutive games, making the number 56 one of baseball's most sacred figures. No streak is more famous or perhaps more astonishing, but on a more modest scale, Rennie Stennett of the Pirates entered the record books in 1975 in a game at Wrigley Field when he collected 4 singles, 2 doubles, and a triple. In all, 7 consecutive hits in 9 innings. Back in 1952, Walt Dropo had a record streak soon after he went from Boston to Detroit. In 3 games, he had 12 straight hits, tying the mark set 14 years earlier by Pinky Higgins of the Red Sox. Rogers Hornsby, the Cardinals' hitting magician, bore the nickname Raja, and a picture-perfect swing that in 1924 produced a batting average of .424, still the highest single-season average of all time. By the way, it was not Hornsby, but Ty Cobb who won the most batting titles with 12. Manny Mota, the Dominican star who spent most of his 20-year career with the Dodgers, had a knack for delivering in the pinch. His career total of 150 pinch hits is the highest of all time. In 1976, Jose Morales of the Expos set the all-time single-season record when he collected 25 pinch hits. Henry Aaron is the first name in the record books, the first name in home runs, and the first name in runs batted in, with a total of 2,174. And did you also know that Aaron's hit total ranks third behind Rose and Cobb? When it comes to ranking the 5'6" Hack Wilson, he belongs first in runs batted in for one season. In 1930, he drove in an incredible 190 runs. By the way, Sonny Jim Bottomley holds the all-time mark for most RBIs in a game, 12. Rogers Hornsby is one of only two players to win 2 Triple Crowns. The other is Ted Williams, the Red Sox batting genius, who is also the last player in history to hit over 400. In 1941, he hit .406. And now for those embarrassing records. You might say when Reggie Jackson went down, he went down swinging. Although he hit more than 500 home runs, he also wound up with a record 2,597 strikeouts. Jim Rice of the Red Sox is also in the books with a feat he'd rather forget. In 1984, he grounded into 36 double plays, most for one season. For Joel Youngblood, August 4th, 1982 was a day to remember. First, playing for the Mets in the afternoon, he got a hit at Wrigley Field. Later that day, Youngblood was traded to Montreal. That night, as an Expo, he singled, making him the only player to get 2 hits the same day with 2 different teams in 2 cities. Finally, Dwayne Kuiper of the Cleveland Indians was ever so slick in the field. But a Sultan of SWAT, he was not. Kuiper owns the longest home run drought ever. He hit his first home run after more than 1,300 at-bats, then retired 1,998 at-bats later, without ever hitting another. Denton True Young, more aptly known as Cy because of the cyclone-like devastation his pitches created, was the winningest hurler ever. He was most revered for his longevity, durability, and uncanny control of the baseball. In his prime, Cy often pitched with only 2 days rest, and over the course of a 22-year career that began in 1890, Young won 511 ball games, a mark that might very well stand for eternity. Walter Johnson, the Big Train, accumulated the second highest total with a blazing fastball. Christy Mathewson, known for his clean living ways, was ironically tied for third on the all-time win list with Grover Cleveland Alexander, who battled alcoholism. And Warren Spahn won more games than any other left-hander in baseball history. Charles Radbourn holds the record for most wins in a season with 60. The man called Old Hoss was perhaps the best pitcher of the 19th century, hurling the ball toward the plate with an underhand delivery. Carl Hubble perfected the pitch known as the screwball and won a record 29 consecutive games during the 1936 and 37 seasons. Carl also struck out 5 Hall of Famers in a row during the 1934 All-Star Game, earning himself a most striking nickname, the Meal Ticket.
Hey! Yes, you did. What? The game's greatest strikeout artist, Nolan Ryan. As a raw-boned fireballer from Texas, Nolan came to the majors in 1966 with the Mets at age 19, possessing a 97-mile-per-hour fastball that simply overpowered hitters. When he finally harnessed the pitch as a member of the Angels, he began a string of 3 consecutive seasons with more than 300 strikeouts. As a Houston Astros fireballer for 9 seasons, Nolan Ryan continued to rack up the Ks. And although accumulating 20 victories only twice during a career that has spanned 3 decades, Nolan's greatness became a matter of record on April 27, 1983. On a sunny afternoon, history was made at Montreal's Olympic Stadium when Ryan became the all-time strikeout king. The 1-2 pitch, strike 3 called on Mills, and there's the record breaker. 3,509 strikeouts for Nolan Ryan.
Well, I knew that that record was going to fall, and there's going to be several people surpass that record, and I just wanted to be the first one to do it.
He also attained another first.
No balls, 2 strikes. 4,000. What a night for Nolan Ryan. What a night for the Astros. What a night for big league baseball.
Another strong-arm Texan, Roger Clemens of the Boston Red Sox, attained a prolific strikeout milestone of his own in 1986 when he struck out an incredible 20 batters in 1 game, a cluster of Ks against Seattle that amounted to a record breaker.
A new record! Clemens has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game. 20.
In 1970, Tom Seaver of the New York Mets set the record for consecutive strikeouts in a game. Tom Terrific struck out 10 batters in a row, including the last batter in the 6th, 3 in the 7th, 3 in the 8th, and 3 straight in the 9th. The lowest career ERA of all time belonged to Ed Walsh, who couldn't afford to allow many runs while pitching for the 1906 White Sox, a club called the Hitless Wonders. Ed's favorite pitch, the spitball. In a more recent era, Bob Gibson of the St. Louis Cardinals captured the lowest single-season ERA in history.
The peak of my career was in 1968, when I had that, I won 22 ball games then, and my earned run average was like 112. What I wanted to do was be a winning pitcher and pitch as best I could and as long as I could, and I accomplished that.
Gibson also attained an amazing 13 shutouts in 1968, but the all-time career shutout record belongs to the big train, Walter Johnson, who through the years of 1907 to 1927 pitched a total of 110. While playing for poor Washington Senator clubs, he proved to be a one-man gang, once hurling a record 55 2/3 consecutive scoreless innings. But it was a Dodger pitcher who rewrote the major league mark. Oral Hershiser faced Montreal batter Dave Martinez on August 30th, 1988, and allowed an RBI single that scored Tim Raines. It was the last run Oral allowed in more than a month. Hershiser hurled 4 scoreless innings against the Expos and went on to allow no runs for the month of September. He struck out 38 batters and threw 5 successive shutouts in pursuit of Don Drysdale's record. But Orel also encountered some tight jams.
Hit high and deep to left field. Gibson going back on the warning track. He had just enough room. Gant flirting with a grand slam, and Hershiser has done it again.
And the streak continued.
Once I got into the 5th or 6th inning in San Diego, the momentum and the atmosphere and the enthusiasm of the crowd really started to build. It came to the point like there was a no-hitter being pitched, and nobody wanted to leave their seat to go get a hot dog or something to drink. And so I just wanted to get to that point in the game. I thought that would be really exciting.
Then the 10th inning.
Unbelievable to go extra innings and give him a chance. The 1-2 pitch. Fly ball to right and a semi-check swing. Gonzalez, the record. Orel Hershiser, 59 consecutive innings, scoreless. The all-time record.
A record breaker that smashed a mark many thought would never be broken. Another pitching feat that involved many zeros on the scoreboard, the no-hit accomplishments of Nolan Ryan, who had 4 no-hitters under his belt until the 9th inning of a game against the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1981. It was then he faced the unprecedented achievement of a 5th no-hit game.
2 balls and no strikes to Baker, and a ground ball to third. He has got it, Art Howe. He got it. Nolan Ryan, no-hitter number 5.
Ryan had been tied with the great Sandy Koufax with 4 no-hitters apiece, but this record breaker lifted Ryan on a pedestal by himself. Yet the no-hit accomplishments of Koufax are not to be overlooked. From 1961 to 1966, Sandy showed unparalleled pitching prowess, firing 3 no-hitters. And in 1965, 1 year before he decided to retire because of serious arm problems, Koufax threw his 4th.
It is 9:46 p.m. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung out and missed. A perfect game.
All I can remember is that as the ball game went along, I started to feel better and better. And the last 2 innings, I don't know if I've ever felt any better than that in the ball game.
Johnny Vandermeer of the Cincinnati Reds was the only pitcher in history to throw no-hitters in back-to-back starts. The first was against the Boston Bees in Cincinnati.
It was one of the few days that I was throwing the ball exactly where I wanted to throw it all day. The end result was there was about 80% of the plays were ground balls in the infield. I was throwing a lot of sinkers. It was an entirely different pitch ball game and an entirely different game than the second one.
Which was played at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn and was also Brooklyn's first night game ever.
The first ball game I had good control, as I said, and I didn't have my real good fastball. The second ball game I was, which was 4 days later with 3 days rest, I was busting the ball real good. I'd probably thrown the ball 95, 96, 97 miles an hour. And I didn't have a good curveball in that game like I had in the first game.
Yet the results were exactly the same for the 23-year-old phenom. The Cy Young Award goes to baseball's best pitcher, and no one has won it more than Lefty.
Come on, Lefty, strike him out!
Steve Carlton won the Cy Young Award 4 times. In 1972, he won 27 games for a Philly team that won only 59. Quite a single-handed effort. Hoyt Wilhelm pitched in 1,018 games as a reliever throughout a career that spanned 21 years with 9 different teams. He helped make relief pitching a more vital part of baseball with his success. Wilhelm reached the majors at the age of 29 and retired at 49, his fluttering knuckleball being the key to his incredible longevity and record number of relief appearances. He also became the first reliever to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But Wilhelm's record number of relief outings was broken in 1989 by Kent Tekulve.
So Tekulve passing Wilhelm in games in relief. Wilhelm still has 1,070 games pitched. Tekulve, 51 behind in that department. Here's the next pitch, a ground ball to the right side. Benzinger drops it, picks it up, gives it to Tekulve in time.
The pitcher who holds the single-season mark for saves is Dave Righetti. The New York Yankee reliever broke the record with saves in both ends of a doubleheader.
Popped up into shallow center. Righetti should get the record. Randolph has got it. The game is over. The Yankees have won. All of the Yankees coming out of the dugout congratulating Dave Righetti on his 46th save as he sets a new saves record for Major League Baseball.
Rollie Fingers saved more contests than any other reliever. Over the course of a 17-year career, he saved 341 games. With the handlebar mustache as his trademark, Fingers became the first American League reliever to win the MVP award as a member of the Brewers in 1981. The best one-loss record for a reliever is 18-1.
There's probably 6 or 7 games I could have lost where I went in and we had a 1 or 2 run lead and the other team would tie it up or go ahead and run. And we'd come back in the 9th inning and win it.
Face also holds the career mark for wins by a reliever with 96. Pitching greats occasionally hold dubious records, such as Cy Young, who won more games than any other pitcher, but also fell to defeat a record 313 times. Nolan Ryan struck out more batters than anyone, but also walked more and threw more wild pitches than anyone else in history. Robin Roberts was an all-time Philadelphia Philly pitching great with 234 wins, but he also surrendered an astonishing 505 home runs. Walter Johnson held many great marks, but the big train also caused some pain. He hit a record 206 batters. It was often said that not even Phil Niekro knew where his knuckler was going after he released it, and the record books collaborate. Knucksy holds the National League mark for wild pitches with 200. Now let's turn to the game's greatest glove men, players with the most gold gloves of all time, and a sampling of their defensive brilliance. Cinder in the grass was not the case for the 1886 Cubs. That team, led by Hall of Fame player-manager Cap Anson, had a record 5 players who led the league in errors. The infield alone made 248. Now let's turn to the base stealer, just as baseball did in the second half of the century. One of the more famous trendsetters was Lou Brock. In 1966, he began a stretch in which he led the National League in steals 8 times in 9 years. None of those years ever stealing fewer than 50 bases.
I had the reputation of stealing the base. The pitcher has pride out there saying, you're not going to do it easy against me. And so he began to throw over there. Whether I wants to run or not, he create and build that urge to run because he's asking you to a duel. And once you accept that challenge, it's no longer whether I'm running to steal a base. It's the challenge of the moment that's important.
In 1974, the Cardinals' unstoppable Man of Steel broke Maury Will's record of 104 steals when he chalked up 118. Down went the single-season record, and 3 years later, down went Ty Cobb's all-time record.
He's going. The pitch is high. The throw is safe. He stole it. The throw got by the shortstop, and Brock has done it. The shortstop couldn't handle the bad throw, and this is it, folks. Brock has now stolen 893.
Before he retired in 1979, Brock would bring his record total to 938. But the year he retired was also the year Rickey Henderson stepped into Oakland's lineup. American League fans hadn't seen anything quite like Henderson's speed in years. In his sophomore season, he became the first player in the league and 3rd player ever to steal 100 bases. He did it again in 1982, but this time Henderson didn't stop until he reached Brock's record, a feat he accomplished in Milwaukee's County Stadium on August 27th. On this steal, Henderson passed Brock with number 119, on his way to 130. Davey Lopes was also a man on the run. In 1975, the Dodgers' second baseman went on a base-stealing streak in which he didn't get caught for 6 weeks. During that stretch, Lopes set a record when he swiped 38 straight. An early star of the base paths, Pittsburgh's Max Carey led the league in steals 10 times, a record that still stands. Carey also stole home 33 times, but that's not the most ever. That record belongs to Ty Cobb, who stole home 50 times. The single-season mark is shared by 2 players, Rod Carew, who one year stole home 7 times. And Pistol Pete Reeser, the Brooklyn Dodger, who they said could outrun anything on 2 feet. Harry Spillman, on the other hand, was built for comfort, not for speed. He went 9 years without a steal, and then...
There goes the runner on first, breaking for second, a throw. They should have him easily, and he is out.
Not so. Spillman escaped the tag and got his first steal, ending the longest drought in history. Now to some final facts and figures. It's the rare player who possesses both power and speed. In fact, only 10 players have ever hit 30 homers and stolen 30 bases the same season. Jose Canseco, the star outfielder of the Oakland A's, may have known little of such facts. But in 1988, he knew better than anyone about becoming the first 40-40 player.
Basically, I thought if I just stay consistent and use my ability and didn't go into any slumps, that I can make the 40-40 club. What I didn't realize is that there are no members in the 40-40 club, so I sort of just laughed at that.
Having reached the home run plateau, Canseco needed one more steal for an even 40-40.
Stand by. Which pitch is he going to run on? He's leaning a little bit right now. He's running. There's the throw. Number 40. Jose Canseco, the first man ever in big league history. He's getting a standing ovation ballpark. There's Standing. Now he's going to get it. He stole it. It's his. He's got it.
That's great.
It wasn't power and speed, but pitching that carried the 1954 Cleveland Indians to a record 111 victories. The brand new 1962 Mets didn't have much power, speed, or pitching, and Casey Stengel's lovable losers ended up with a record of 40 wins and 120 losses. No major league team before or since has been quite so hapless. Connie Mack, the most enduring manager of all time, came to work in a business suit and almost never left the dugout. He managed the Philadelphia Athletics for 53 years. Of course, he had plenty of job security since he also owned the team. As for Mack's record, he's first in wins and first in losses. When Mack was finally through in 1951, he turned the team over to Jimmy Dykes. But Dykes didn't stay long, nor did he have much success. In his 21 years, he managed a record 6 different teams, and not one of them ever finished as high as second place. Dykes' managerial travels are equaled only by Dick Williams, the tough-talking, tough-minded skipper who fared remarkably well even if he did keep packing. In a career that spanned 21 years and 6 teams, Williams won 4 division titles, 4 pennants, and 2 World Series. He was 60 years old when he managed his last team, more than twice the age of shortstop Lou Boudreau when he turned player-manager of the Indians. The youngest manager ever, Boudreau, was 24. The youngest player ever was Joe Nuxhall. Called on by the Reds for 1 game during World War II, he was only 15. Satchel Paige already had a brilliant career in the Negro Leagues when he came to the newly integrated Major Leagues at the age of 42. He pitched for 4 more years. In 1965, he came out of retirement, making 1 appearance with Kansas City, and at the age of 59, became the oldest pitcher ever. Endurance was Lou Gehrig's trademark. On July 25, 1925, Gehrig filled in at first base for Wally Pipp. For the next 14 years, he played every game. But in 1939, Gehrig's reflexes were nearly gone. He was suffering from a neuromuscular disease, and on May 2nd took himself out of the lineup after playing in 2,130 consecutive games. 2 months later, Gehrig was given a day in his honor at Yankee Stadium. Members of the 1927 Yankees turned out for the tribute. And on that July 4th, the Yankees' Iron Horse said his famous goodbye to a packed house of more than 61,000.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Two years later, at the age of 38, Lou Gehrig was dead. The heroes, though, endure long after the tumult and the shouting have died. At Dodger Stadium in 1982, the shouting never seemed to quit. That year, the Dodgers drew 3,608,000, a record like all those in baseball that fuel the legends, telling of pennants won and lost, careers made and careers broken. The record breakers that connect fan to fan and generation to generation.
Here's the windup. Fastball hits deep to right. This could be it. Way back there. Holy cow! What's the matter?
has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game. 20.